Welcome to Dark Broadcast. Stay quiet and stay aware.
Midnight on Highway 17. Sometimes the scariest thing that can happen to you ends up in your own car, just sitting in the passenger seat, looking out the dark window and politely answering questions. I still can't sleep at night, even though it's been 3 months. The police say I was lucky. They don't know what they're talking about. Luck is when the danger stays outside, behind a locked door. Not when you let it in yourself. Lock the doors from the inside and drive it with you into the pitch black, listening to your own voice tremble with growing terror. It was November 9th. I was driving back from Greenville where I'd visited my parents. Work in Seattle didn't leave time for frequent trips, and I left late after dark. On the local radio, which kept cutting in and out, there was an emergency broadcast. A patient had escaped from the Center Point psychiatric facility. Dangerous. They advised against picking up hitchhikers and to report any suspicious individuals. I turned the volume knob, smirked. What hitchhikers on a highway like this at this hour? Highway 17 is 40 miles of forest, a winding 2-lane road, and a complete absence of light. All I could see was what the headlights snatched from the darkness: asphalt, guardrails, the fleeting trunks of pine trees. My Honda was a tiny bubble of light and warmth in a vast, indifferent, cold ocean of night. That's exactly why I stopped when I saw him. He was standing under a lone, dead road sign, no car, no bag, just standing there, bouncing slightly from the cold, his thumb out. My mind screamed asterisk, no asterisk, but something else, some stupid, ingrained social politeness made me slow down. He looked normal. Middle-aged, dark jacket, short-cropped hair. Not that I could see him well. I rolled the window down a couple of inches. "Car trouble," I shouted over the noise of the wind. "Yeah," his voice was calm, low. "Battery, I think, and my phone's dead. Could you give me a ride to the Eco gas station? It's just 10 miles up." The Eco gas station. I knew the place, a tiny island of civilization before the highway plunged into the deepest wilderness. 10 miles, 20 minutes. What could happen in 20 minutes? "Get in," I said, unlocking the door. Stupidity. Pure, concentrated stupidity. He got in, buckled up. He smelled of damp earth and something metallic, acrid, like cheap antiseptic. "Thanks, you're a lifesaver. Name's Gary." "Ethan," I grunted, pulling back onto the road. The car rolled back into the darkness. The first 5 miles passed in silence. He sat perfectly still, looking straight ahead. In the glow of the dashboard lights, I caught a glimpse of his face, unremarkable, with a firm jaw and deep-set eyes. But something was off about his stillness. He didn't turn his head, didn't look around. He just stared forward like a soldier on parade. I turned on the radio to drown out the anxiety. The music gave way to static, and from the static emerged the announcer's voice again, more tense now. Repeating an emergency bulletin. Patient Gary Holt has escaped from the Center Point facility. Age 42. Considered dangerous, possibly armed. Last seen wearing a dark blue jacket and jeans. If sighted, do not approach, call immediately. I clicked the radio off. The silence in the cabin became resonant, physical. I felt an icy chill run down my spine. Dark blue jacket, jeans. Gary. 10 miles to the gas station, but we'd already gone 6. 4 left. "Strange night," I said, and my voice sounded too loud, too strained. "Yeah," he replied, in the same even, emotionless tone. "Very strange. You know, Ethan, what's the worst thing about prison? Not even prison, a place like that." I swallowed. My hands tightened on the wheel. "I don't know. The lack of choice. They feed you at a certain time. They let you out for walks on a schedule. Even your thoughts, they stop being entirely your own. You start hearing voices telling you what to do, and then you realize they're the doctor's voices. They're planting them in your head. I risked a quick glance at him. He was still looking forward, but the corner of his mouth twitched in a semblance of a smile. You're from there?" I asked, already hatting myself for the question. "Oh yes, indefinitely," they said. But indefinitely is a flexible concept, isn't it? Especially when you know that guard Carl likes to nap on the night shift, and the grating on the bathroom window has been loose for 6 months. We passed a sign, "Eco Gas 2 miles, 2 miles, 4 minutes. My heart was pounding somewhere in my throat. "I need to pull over," I blurted out suddenly. "Check the tires, heard a weird noise." "Noise?" Gary slowly turned his head. His eyes finally met mine. They were flat like a shark's. "I didn't hear anything. Let's drive to the station. You can check there." It wasn't a request. It was an order. The tone remained even, but a steel thread had appeared in it, chilling me to the bone. No, better now. I was already slowing down, looking for any gap in the trees, a piece of shoulder. I said, "Keep driving, Ethan." His hand came down on my wrist. The grip was inhumanly strong, cold like a dead man's. I yelped and jerked my arm. The car swerved. At the same moment, he pulled something from behind his belt. Not a knife. Something shiny and sharp, like a long, sharpened screwdriver or a homemade awl. He pressed the point against my thigh, right at the artery. "Easy, easy, just drive where I said. We're not going to the station. Camera's there, we'll pass it. Next turn to the right onto the logging road. You know it." I did, a muddy, rutted track leading into the thickest part of the woods. No one went there except loggers. I nodded, unable to utter a word. Fear paralyzed me. All those stupid instructions from movies, fight, run, defend yourself, crumbled to dust. I was a hostage in my own car, steered by the thin blade of a homemade shiv. "Good boy," he hissed, and his breath smelled of copper and something sour. We flew past the brightly lit Eco gas station. I saw the silhouettes of people in the store window. My life was 20 meters away and I couldn't reach it. I drove on into the darkness. A few hundred yards later, he ordered me to turn. The Honda struggled onto the dirt road, branches whipping the windshield. We delved deeper into the forest. The headlights snatched ghostly tree trunks as if we were sailing on a black, bottomless sea. "Stop here." I stopped the car, killed the engine. Silence descended, absolute ringing. All I could hear was my ragged breathing and his, even and shallow. What do you want?" I whispered. "Money, take the car, take everything." He laughed, a short, dry sound like the crack of a dead branch. "I don't want your things, Ethan. I want your skin." He said it so simply, as if asking for a cigarette. "My what?" "Your skin, you see, mine is spoiled. Scars, tattooed numbers, needle marks, they'll recognize me right away. But yours, it's clean, young, it'll suit me." The madness of his words was so monstrous that for a second it even overrode the fear. I turned, looking into his face. He looked at me not as a person but as a thing, as material. In his flat eyes there was no malice, no ecstasy, only cold, calculating interest. "That's impossible," I choked out. "Everything's possible if you try hard enough," he said and pressed the awl a little harder. I felt a sharp pain, the warmth of blood on my skin. "Get out," slowly. I reached for the door handle, my movements cottony, slowed down. My brain frantically searched for a way out. I had no weapon. My phone was in the glove compartment in plain sight. Run into the forest, into the dark. He'd catch me. Or he'd just get in my car and drive away, and I'd be left here to die from blood loss or exposure. When my foot touched the cold ground, I understood I was going to die anyway, here and now, at the hands of this man who wanted to skin me like a sofa cover. The survival instinct, that primal blind one, finally broke through the paralysis. When he got out after me, still leaning towards me with that damned awl, I lunged. Not away from him. At him. With all my strength, I shoved him, aiming for his chest, and the next instant I threw myself into a run. Not into the woods, but back towards the highway. I heard his roar, no longer calm, but furious, bestial, and the sound of pursuit. My feet caught on roots, branches scratched my face. I ran, not seeing the path, gasping for air, with a wet stain on my pants from the cut. The headlights' glow faded behind me, and soon I was plunged into complete, impenetrable darkness. I ran towards the sound of the occasional car coming from the highway. And then I tripped, fell face first into the cold mud. Before I could get up, he was on me, his hands wrapped around my neck from behind. It smelled of earth, blood, and madness. "SHHH," he whispered right into my ear. "SHHH, it'll be quicker if you don't struggle." I thrashed, trying to throw him off, but he was heavier, stronger. He flipped me over, sat on my chest, pinning me down. In the dark, I could only see a vague silhouette and the gleam of his eyes. He raised the awl. And at that moment, the world burst into light. A blinding white light flooded the forest clearing. The roar of an engine, the screech of brakes, a truck, a giant semi who must have pulled off the road, maybe to check a map or sleep. Gary froze for an instant, blinded. That instant was enough. With the last of my strength, I broke free, rolled away, and screamed. Not a cry for help, just a meaningless animal shriek of terror. The truck door opened. A rough voice called out, "Hey, everything all right over there?" Gary jumped up. He looked at me, at the truck. Rage, frustration flashed in his eyes, and calculation. He couldn't handle two, especially not a giant like that. He turned and vanished into the dark of the forest, silently like a ghost. The trucker, a burly guy named Roy, picked me up, drove me to the gas station, and called the police. They searched for Gary for 2 weeks, found him in a neighboring state in a stolen pickup. He gave up without a fight. They say he was calm and polite during interrogations. They told me I was lucky, that I survived. I got away with a few stitches on my thigh and a scare, but they don't understand. They didn't sit in the car with him. They didn't hear him talk about your skin in his ordinary, everyday voice. They don't feel, even now, every night when I get behind the wheel and see the empty passenger seat, the chills crawling down my spine. I check the locks 10 times. I never turn on the radio so I won't miss an emergency broadcast. And the scariest thing is the question I keep asking myself over and over. He wanted my skin to pass for me, to disappear. And when he looked at me with his flat eyes in the dashboard light, he wasn't just sizing up a victim. He was trying on my face, my life. And sometimes, in the darkest moments, I feel like he got it after all. That the real Ethan stayed back there in those woods with a shiv in his throat. And the one who came back, who's writing these words, that's just something that pulled on his skin and is trying to remember how to be human. They caught the psychopath, but they don't know what he managed to plant inside me, and that they'll never let out.
Think about which moment of this story touched you the most. I'm curious what you felt.
The key to the door. It all started with pain, not the everyday familiar kind you can endure by swallowing a pill. No, this was a deep rolling pain somewhere in my very foundation, in my bones, as if they were slowly crystallizing and about to crumble. Doctors at regular hospitals threw up their hands. A rare syndrome, degenerative, inoperable, Try to live with it, they said, and their eyes added, until you die. I scoured the internet like a cornered animal and stumbled upon an article about Dr. Algi's rickets, the private Eureka clinic somewhere in the countryside in the mountains. A self-taught genius decades ahead of his time, controversial methods, outstanding results. The reviews were either ecstatic, he saved my life, or non-existent. There was no phone, only a form on the website. Describe your symptoms, attach your scans. I sent everything I had in a fit of desperation. The reply came 2 hours later. We can help tomorrow. Address attached, confidential. The Eureka Clinic turned out to be an ultra-modern cube of concrete and glass stuck to a mountainside. Inside, it was sterile, quiet, and empty. No reception desk, no nurses. He met me himself, Dr. Ricketts, tall, lean, with sharp features and hair carefully styled in gray strands. His eyes were the lightest, almost watery blue. He didn't smile. He shook my hand, his fingers long, cold, and incredibly strong. Jacob, he said, and my name in his mouth sounded like a diagnosis. Welcome to the Temple of Recovery. He led me to an office more like a laboratory. Monitors glowed with 3D models of organs. Incomprehensible machines hummed softly. Your problem is not in the tissue, he declared, not looking at my scans. Your problem is in the signal. The body sends a distorted impulse to the brain returns a distorted response. Pain is an error in the code. I will not treat your bones. I will correct the code. He spoke hypnotically. Words like neural pathways, rewiring pain channels, surgery of perception swirled in my head, mingling with smoldering hope. I signed papers without reading them. There were whole stacks. I was ready for anything. The first horror came upon waking after the first procedure. I came to not in a room, but in something like a translucent medical capsule. The air smelled of ozone and metal. I couldn't move. My body was restrained by soft but incredibly strong straps. My head was fixed. A machine hummed nearby with thin, wire-like probes running from it to my temple and spine. The pain was gone. In its place was emptiness, a strange, waxy numbness. But I felt something else. A stirring under my skin, as if large, slow ants were crawling along my ribs. Ricketts appeared silently, like a ghost, in a sterile gown with a tablet in hand. Excellent neural activity, he muttered, more to himself than to me. The implant is integrating, beginning to dictate new parameters. What did you implant in me? I forced out with difficulty. My tongue felt like cotton. A key, Jacob. A key to the cage your body has locked you in. Now the cage will be rebuilt. He left, leaving me alone with the hum of machines and the quiet, horrifying feeling that something foreign now lived inside me. Something that clicked and buzzed softly. The days blurred into one continuous, sunless nightmare. I was fed through a tube. Procedures followed one after another. Ricketts called them calibration sessions. He didn't operate in the usual sense. He used lasers, ultrasonic emitters, injected nano-compounds. The pain vanished completely, but its place was taken by something inexpressibly alien. I began to hear, not sounds, but electrical impulses. The hum of a refrigerator in the next room was a deafening symphony of discharges to me. I saw heat traces on the walls. My perception of the world was splitting, digitizing, turning into a set of data. And then came the donors. I saw them during one of the rare moments I was being transported to another lab. Through a narrow window in the corridor, I noticed doors with sealed hatches. On one of the plates, the word biomass was crookedly scratched. And at that moment, as my gurney passed by, the hatch opened slightly and I saw parts. A limb connected to a system of tubes. An eye floating in a cylinder with a nerve stretching to electrodes. a human ribcage rhythmically rising under mechanical respiration, and it was all alive. I felt a vague, panicked impulse emanating from that eye. It saw me. Ricketts caught my gaze. His icy eyes narrowed. "Pay no attention. That is raw material. Their pain was meaningless. I am putting it to constructive use. Their suffering will become the building blocks for another's healing. Your body is already accepting gifts." Then I understood everything. I was not a patient. I was an experiment, the final project, a living canvas on which this madman was painting his vision of a new man, devoid of pain but filled with others' parts, carved from them and reprogrammed perception. I tried to rebel, but my body no longer obeyed me. The implant, the device embedded in my brainstem, dictated its own will. My hand rose to scratch the back of my head at a command I did not give. I spoke, and my voice held foreign intonations. "Calm down, Subject Jacob," said my own voice, but controlled by it. "Resistance is counterproductive. The goal is perfection." Ricketts watched this with cold interest. He had refined his methods. Now he wasn't just implanting, he was erasing me, piece by piece. Memories of my mother, my first kiss, the smell of rain, they became blurred, replaced by clean, clear data, diagrams, formulas, sensor readings. I fought. I clung to the shards of myself, to the pain that once was my curse, but now seemed the only proof I was still alive. The final procedure was called full convergence. I was placed in the central operating room, a huge circular chamber with a multi-armed surgical robot looming in the center like a spider. Ricketts stood on a balcony behind glass. He wasn't in a gown. He was in a dark suit, as for a presentation. "Today we shed the last dust of your old self, Jacob," his voice boomed from the speakers. "You will become pure consciousness in an optimized vessel, the pinnacle of my work, living proof." The robot came to life. Its arms with shiny instruments reached for me. I felt the implant in my head rejoicing, syncing with the machine. It was disabling the last, deepest, protective areas of my consciousness. I saw the laser scalpel approaching my unprotected eye, not for removal, for connection. And in this last moment of despair, when almost nothing of me remained, I found a tiny, not yet erased piece, animal wild terror, and I didn't fight it. I poured everything left of me into it, all my will, all my fear, and sent that focused, monstrous impulse directly into the implant. Not a command to resist, a command to self-destruct, to burn everything, all circuits, all protocols. An alarm wailed in the OR. The robot jerked and froze. Wild waves flooded the monitors. Ricketts cried out no and rushed to the control panel. And inside me, a fire began. It wasn't physical pain. It was the collapse of a universe. Neural bridges crumbled, artificial synapses exploded, foreign memories sewn into mine burned. I felt the pieces of the donors inside me dying. The last thing I saw was Ricketts's face pressed against the glass. Not in horror. No. In furious, inhuman disappointment, an artist watching his masterpiece explode before his eyes. Then darkness. I woke up, lying on the cold floor of the OR. Smoke was clearing. The robot hung limp. My body was a monster. In some places, the skin was translucent, revealing biomechanical nodes. The fingers of one hand were unnaturally long, with sensors on the tips. I saw in the infrared spectrum. I heard the ticking of electrical clocks 3 walls away. I got up. The movements were smooth, precise, alien. I walked to the mirrored surface of a switched-off monitor, and I saw it. Not a man, not a cyborg, a failed hybrid. A creature with Jacob's face, but eyes, the eyes were mine, but the pupils now constricted and dilated with mechanical precision, and in their depth glowed a dim, greenish light of indicators. Ricketts was dead. He had fallen, hitting his temple on the panel. Irony, his creation killed the creator simply by ceasing to exist. I walked out into the corridor. The Eureka Clinic was dead. Only life support systems for those parts in the boxes hummed quietly. I approached the hatch labeled biomass. My new alien body, without my command, reached out and entered a code on the panel. The hatch opened. Cold vapor poured out. There in the sterile light, organs, limbs, fragments pulsed and breathed. They were waiting their turn, waiting to become someone's key to the cage. And I understood. I couldn't destroy them. That would be barbarism. This is Dr. Ricketts's legacy. His work must continue. I found his office. No one would come for me today. My documents were erased. I am a ghost. I sat at his computer. My new sensor-tipped finger itself found the necessary files, passed Ricketts's biometric authorization. An unfinished letter glowed on the screen. Dear Mr. Edwards, we have reviewed your medical history. Your case is complex, but we can help. I looked at my hand, this strange, perfect, horrifying combination of flesh and wires. The pain was gone. Fear had become a quiet, constant background, like the hum of ventilation. I placed my fingers on the keyboard. They found the right keys themselves. We can help tomorrow. Address attached, confidential. Someone must continue the work. Someone must assemble the puzzle. I am no longer Jacob. I am the heir. I am the key, and I need new doors.
And if you were in a similar situation, what would you do? I wonder how others would react.
The whisper behind the door. I never thought silence could be dangerous, but that night it came alive, as if the house itself began to breathe, as if the walls were tracking every breath I took. I was sitting in an old armchair at the Silver Pines Motel, in room number 12, listening to the rain drum on the metal roof and the wind howling through the window cracks. The lights went out around midnight. One moment I was scrolling through my phone, checking notifications, scrolling the empty feed of social media, and the next, complete darkness. Only the pale light of the moon filtered through the blinds. The room became a black square. I instinctively pulled the blanket over my shoulders, listening to the house creak and groan. Old floorboards, the air conditioner that turned on and off by itself, drafts from the cracks. Minutes stretched on endlessly. The phone in my hand flashed a low battery warning. I heard every sound, raindrops on the roof, the chair creaking under my own weight, the faint buzz of an old lamp in the hallway. Everything became alien, too close, too distinct. And then I heard it. A thin, almost imperceptible whisper outside the room door. At first I thought it was the wind in a crack, but it didn't fade. On the contrary, it grew clearer. The words didn't form a sentence, just separate sounds that I felt in my chest, as if someone were slowly exhaling directly onto my back. I froze, my heart beat louder than ever. I know you're not asleep, the voice whispered. I was alone. No motel staff, no neighbors in the hall, but the sound was alive. It moved, slid along the walls, bumped against the furniture, returned to the door. I wanted to scream, but my throat went dry. The only thing I could do was listen and hope it was just my mind playing tricks. But a few seconds later, it spoke again. Let me in. I felt the door tremble slightly. as if someone was behind it, light, almost invisible but real. My hand reached for the handle, but I stopped as if an inner voice screamed, "Don't open it." I kept listening. The whisper turned into a scraping sound, slow, patient, as if claws were catching on the wood. Every movement was accompanied by a quiet crunch, and I imagined fingers, nails, bones, anything that could fit behind that door. Seconds stretched into hours. I counted them to keep my sanity. 1, 2, 3, and suddenly silence. Complete, impenetrable. I thought it was over, that the fear had left. But the feeling of presence didn't disappear. It grew closer, invisible but tangible. I heard my own pulse, my breathing, which seemed louder than anything else in the room. I decided to whisper back, "No." The floorboards behind the door shifted, as if the creature retreated but didn't leave. Then it paused, and the voice said quietly, confidently, "Then I'll wait. All night." I sat, not moving. With every minute, I realized that the door wasn't just wood and a handle. It was the boundary between me and something that knew all my fears. Thin, yet impenetrable, and it was the only thing holding me on the edge of madness. In the morning, the rain stopped. Light seeped into the room, flooding everything with a pale, cold glow. I glanced back at the door. It was ordinary, but I didn't approach it. I still haven't. Every sound from the hallway makes me flinch. Every creak of furniture feels familiar. I hear whispers when I think the house is empty. Sometimes shadows slide at the edge of my vision, but when I turn, there's nothing. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it will come back. But I know one thing: you mustn't open the door. And the longer I stay here, the clearer it becomes that fear is what remains when all evidence disappears. Right now I'm sitting, typing this on my phone, afraid to move. The motel is empty. The halls are deserted, but behind my room door someone is waiting. And I'm sure it will never leave. It just whispers patiently and waits.
If this story left you thinking, tell me what stayed in your mind. The next broadcast begins when the signal returns.